you're best known, I think, for your Flight of the Conchords, I think, by far. But you've done more and more films of late, and I really think that's an interesting...
No one watches them.
No one watches them? Yeah, but we're going to change that.
I tried writing this intro so many times, and there was nothing I could do to make myself sound like a person of good sound mind. Have you ever had a pet that has heartworm? If you have, sorry. If you haven't, you should know that the treatment lasts about 4 months, and during those 4 months you have to keep your pet super, super low-key. For 2 of those months, your pet has to basically stay confined to their crate or just inside, keeping their heart rate down so that they actually survive the treatment. My dog has heartworm and severe separation anxiety, so in order to keep his heart rate down, I haven't really been able to leave the house. This is Niles, as in Crane. So what have I done with all of this newly found free time? Well, I watched all 2 seasons of Flight of the Conchords, got really into it, and then went out exploring for anything I could possibly find in the greater Conchords universe. I don't choose the hyperfocus. The hyperfocus chooses me. Today I'm going to be telling you about every movie that Jemaine Clement, one half of Flight of the Conchords, has ever been in. So what I'm going to be doing with that knowledge of all 28 movies is I'm going to put them onto a tier list, and as a bonus, I'm going to be playing a little smash or pass with the characters. What do you think about that? Then at the end, I will be naming my favorite movie, least favorite movie, and top smash. And real quick, let's just go over the criteria of the tier list. S tier is amazing, incredible, unbelievable, couldn't be better. A tier would be in the S tier if the other movies didn't exist. B tier, I'd probably watch this again. C tier, glad I watched, might not watch again. D tier, wasn't a total waste of time, but I'm not watching it again. E tier, I didn't like it, but that doesn't mean it was a bad movie. F tier, waste of time, hated it, want nothing to do with it. This video is going to be rife with spoilers. I just want you to know that in case you haven't seen Rio 2 yet and you really wanted to and you wanted to go in spoiler free. I will go over the plot of Rio 2 and it's gonna get spoiled. I'm sorry. I didn't include any movies specific to Brett McKenzie, the other half of Flight of the Conchords like Austin Land or the Lord of the Rings franchise. And I didn't include any television shows or albums because this project was already so out of hand. There was nothing I couldn't watch anymore. Plus, if I were to talk about the TV show Flight of the Conchords, it would require its own video because I got a lot of shit to say about it. Okay, last point on the housekeeping agenda. If you clicked on this video and for some reason don't know who Jemaine Clement is, here's a little brief rundown. Clement is an actor, filmmaker, DILF, Kiwi musician, and one half of New Zealand's 4th most popular comedy folk duo, Flight of the Conchords. You may know Clement from such films as 2014's What We Do in the Shadows, or more recently, Avatar: The Way of Water, or television shows such as Flight of the Conchords and Legion, but I just like to think of him as the giant crab from Moana. Okay, we got a little over 2 decades of career to cover, so let's get into it. Starting off in 1999, we've got a short film called Fizz. Jemaine in this plays Chased Man, that's C-H-A-S-E-D, not C-H-A-S-T-E. I wasn't really sure what I was expecting going to this first one. I just found it on YouTube and it's only 5 minutes long. You know, I loved it more than some of these movies that were like 2 hours long. Why take that long to tell a story, you know? 5 minutes. 5 minutes is all you need. It's a story about a sentient soda machine and I think that's all you really need to know. I don't want to say too much about it because it is only 5 minutes long and I think that it's worth watching. Starting off pretty good. This one goes in the B tier. I liked it. It was short, it was sweet, it was to the point. Fizz 1999, nailed it. As far as a smash or pass, I'm gonna mark this one as a pass just because I know there were a lot of smashes on this list and I didn't get to spend enough time with this guy to really make a clear decision on that. Plus, how am I supposed to pay attention to Chased Man when the soda machine is right there? Next is a personal favorite of mine. It's called Tongan Ninja and it's from 2002. I'm so excited that we get to start our first feature film on such a positive note. Tongan Ninja is a kung fu action movie about a ninja who has to travel to New Zealand to help his master's brother save his restaurant. And on the way, he has to defeat the so-called syndicate, including Knife Man, Gunman, and Action Fighter. Jemaine plays Marvin, or Action Fighter, in this one, and he also voices the Tongan Ninja himself, which I didn't find out until the very end. But then I went back and watched clips and I was like, oh duh, of course that's Jemaine.
He says my father was weak because he was eaten by a fish.
Right off the bat here in the opening credits, we have our first Brett sighting. Brett McKenzie from Flight of the Conchords. According to the opening credits, he and Jemaine wrote all the original songs for the movie. As soon as I saw that, it clicked that the Tongan Ninja theme song
Talking about the Tongan Ninja. The Tongan Ninja.
Sounded a whole lot like the Mermaids song from the episode of Flight of the Conchords where they go on tour.
Mermaid, mermaid.
And incidentally, both of those kind of sound like the Love Boat song. So, I don't know. I also got jump scared by Taika Waititi in this movie, which you will see will happen a few different times in this video. This one made me laugh the most and the hardest, I think. This was co-written by Jemaine, and it's brilliant.
I gouged out his eyes, swapped them around, and then replaced them.
I've heard it said that most B-movie parodies are bad because they can't really capture the authenticity, the sincerity, the genuine nature of trying to make a movie and it turning out bad and becoming a B-movie. But this movie kind of throws that rule right out the window because it was everything. Every second of this movie was hilarious. Starting with the bad ADR voice acting, down to skirting using bad words by just saying an entirely different word. They kept calling people homeowner, and I thought it was funny. I'm queer, I get to be an authority on whether or not that's funny. The action parts were sick as hell. There was a part where one of them gets his head just kicked clean off, like clean off. Awesome. I think something that made me really especially drawn to this movie is it feels like how it felt to play pretend when you were a little kid and you're like, I know karate, and you're like doing these like, there was a great amount of joy in this film. I felt like I walked away feeling joyous. I walked away feeling really good from this movie. This movie really is a hidden gem, and I think that way more people need to know about it because I think that way more people would love it. I will 1000% be watching this again. I will watch this 100 more times, and I will be showing it to anyone that will watch. Plus, I'll be singing that theme song for the rest of eternity. This is an easy S tier. This is such an easy S tier. It was so funny. Smash or pass? Smash. Absolutely. Next up is a movie that's called Futile Attraction from 2004. Jemaine is credited on IMDb as editor for this movie, but I would call him maybe man with a gun to his head.
The point that things out of my head. Your main lady.
I took a little bit of issue with this one, but we'll get into that momentarily. This is a New Zealand-based comedy about two 20-somethings who get set up from an online dating platform but have absolutely nothing in common. It's a fun premise, and there's a lot to like about this movie. It's charmingly in 3x4. I love a mockumentary, and one of my favorite parts was that if you watch it closely enough, there's a bunch of little gags going on in the background, like, for example, this scene that was happening in a restaurant.
Well, that's the way it is now. You can get with me.
Really?
Jemaine was in this for about 10 seconds, which I started to suspect once I saw in the opening credits that he was listed under special appearances by. And wait, what's that? You say Brett McKenzie's in this movie? Another Brett sighting so soon? That sounds too good to be true. Okay, so here's where my issue comes in. Where was Brett? Where was he? Jemaine was there at the very end. Remember that waiter I showed you a second ago? That was Taika Waititi. Where was Brett? I watched this movie, didn't see Brett, watched it again at double speed, and still didn't see Brett. Where was he? When I watched this movie, it was not in 4K, so maybe Brett just played a super background character like Taika did, and I just couldn't make him out in like all the 4 pixels on my screen. But I looked. I hunted. If you've seen this movie and you know where Brett is, please tell me, because I was promised Brett and I got none. I didn't get even a sliver of Brett. This is gonna be a C-tier movie because I liked it. It wasn't bad, but it also wasn't one of my #1 favorites. And as far as the project, watching every Jemaine Clement movie, percentage-wise, he was not in this one a lot. Could have been higher, but I was promised Brett and I didn't get to see him. So just be happy you're not in the D tier. Next, we've got What We Do in the Shadows, interviews with some vampires from 2005. Jemaine plays Volvis the Abhorrent. Volvis the Abhorrent. We're gonna breeze through this one a little because it's only 28 minutes long, and in 2014, we're gonna go over the feature film that this became. Basically, it's what the title says. It's a mockumentary, it's an interview with vampire flatmates, and we get to see what happens in their day-to-day lives. Like I said, this is very much a prototype of the 2014 movie, with a lot of the same jokes and the same cast, including Stu. I loved to see Stu. It was fun to see the humble beginnings of a film that I've grown to love so dearly. I'd like to now share some posts that I saw on Jemaine's Twitter about the production of this short film. First and foremost, we've got a Brett sighting. Brett McKenzie was supposed to be in the original short film, but they had to cut his part out because he couldn't stop laughing. As the legend goes, the vampire name that he picked out for himself was Brett, which is incidentally the reason he couldn't stop laughing, according to Jemaine. And to that I say, name your price. What do you want for the Brett cut? I want to see the Brett cut. Here's some pictures that someone posted of an early performance of these characters, including one more Brett sighting. This one's got to go in like the C tier or the D tier. It's a tough one to rate because I know what it became and I love the movie from 2014, but this obviously just isn't going to be as good. It's got a lower budget, it's 28 minutes long. I don't know what you want from me. If I'm being totally fair, it probably should go in the D tier, just based on the criteria that I laid out. I'm gonna pass on Volvis. He's fine, but Vladislav, the vampire that Jemaine plays in the film version, is such a strong smash that it's hard to even consider Volvis as an option. Eagle vs. Shark 2007 is the most I can fix him movie that I have ever seen in my life. This was one movie that really stuck with me, and I actually ended up watching it recreationally during this project when I had other movies on the list that I hadn't seen yet, that I had access to. The story of this movie was written by Taika Waititi and Lauren Horsley, who plays Lily in this movie, and it was written and directed by Taika Waititi. Taika is also the character Gordon in this movie. This film follows two 20-somethings finding their way to each other in a sort of roundabout fashion. They have feelings for each other, but a trip to Jared's hometown on a revenge mission kind of complicates things for them. Jemaine plays Jared, a socially awkward video game clerk, mullet haver, and self-proclaimed ex-nerd.
I used to be a bit of a nerd.
I really love his physical embodiment of this role. He plays the kind of brooding outcast really well. And check out the tactical role over here. In my mind, and I've seen other people talking about this as well, both of these main characters seem to be neurodivergent in one way or another. Just like me. People have guessed that. People have just been like, hey, do you have ADHD? Rude, and also yes. Also, Lily has a crooked smile just like me. And much like Jared, I too have to go to my hometown and be by the ocean for a while. I don't have a revenge mission, I just miss the Pacific Ocean. While taking notes for this movie, I wrote down that it has a Napoleon Dynamite kind of charm in a lovable, dorky way, and apparently this is very much not an original thought because every review I read for this movie also mentioned Napoleon Dynamite. It's true though, that's why everyone's saying it. The characters are portrayed in a really sympathetic way, to the point where even when they mess up or are outright cruel to each other, you can't help but feel for them. When I started it, I thought it would just be like a silly little romp, two oddballs getting together, but it really kind of touched me by the end, especially with the family dynamics. It didn't end up being the easy watch comedy that I thought it was going to be. It really ended up being a thinker and a feeler, too. There's something that's really magnetic about this movie that's hard for me to pin down. On my second watch of this movie, I saw a few more things that really struck me, namely Gordon's paintings. As a viewer, you don't know how long ago the Lowe family lost Gordon, but you can feel the grief radiating through the home, almost like they're waiting for him to come back. I think the imagery of this beautiful green cliff was really profound, and it struck me even harder on my second watch. Going into it the second time, now knowing how Gordon died, really changed the setting for me. I feel like I understood and sympathized with the characters on an even deeper level my second watch, especially Jared. A couple other things that struck me about this movie. One was that every time Jared said sex, it reminded me of this tweet.
Do you want to have sex?
Yep.
Okay, I would recommend this movie if you don't mind cringing at characters that you really grow to love. It's a sweet movie. I really liked it. This one's going in the A tier. It's one of my favorites. This one was hard to smash or pass because, like, as much as I'm unironically into the mullet, Jared's just so complicated that I just don't have the time and the energy. None of it. No. Pass. Hello, my baby. Hi. Good boy. All right, but I'm doing something, okay? Diagnosis Death 2007. This is an interesting one. I did my best to find it online with no luck, so I ended up buying it on DVD. Believe me, I exhausted all possible options before opting to do that. For now, just know that this was like $5, and it was also the last one I watched for this because I had to wait for it to arrive in the mail. I'd like to start by addressing what's on the DVD case because this is one of the only ones we can do that for, and because it is interesting. First, let's take a look at the proportions of the people here. Nobody looks right. Nobody looks right. Next, Brett, Reese, and Jemaine all featured prominently here. That is false advertising. That is not how they are featured in the movie. It's all Brett. Neither Brett nor Reese wear scrubs in this movie. And what is the hammer that Brett's holding? He was not important enough to the plot to get a hammer. Let's move to the back, shall we? This review from Talksport magazine says that this movie is as funny as Shaun of the Dead. Is it now? Is that right? This other review says, a fun cameo from Reese Darby. That's not a review, that's just naming someone in the cast. They don't even say it's a good cameo, they say it's a fun cameo. I'm sure this cameo has a great personality. Diagnosis Death is about a teacher and a high school student. He's not like her teacher, he's just a teacher. And they both participate in a drug trial to try to cure their different forms of cancer. The drugs they're given cause them to hallucinate, and they start to realize that there's more to this cancer ward that meets the eye. There's a mystery to solve, and they're the only two who can do it. This movie opens on the one scene with Jemaine Clement in it, and also Lauren Horsley, who you may remember from the review right before this one, Eagle vs. Shark.
It is our opinion that Eleanor is an A student. An A student should have an A.
I guess in this alternate universe, they grew up and had a kid together, and now they bribe her teachers to give her A's on tests. A little out of character, if you ask me. Rhys Darby's cameo was one of my favorite parts of the movie, so I guess it was a fun cameo. His whole scene is breaking the news to the main guy that he has cancer and it's terminal, but he does it in such a classically Rhys Darby way.
It's terminal. There's no cure. You could imagine a satanic torture from which death is the blessed release.
If I had a terminal illness, I would want Rhys Darby to deliver the news to me. Someone can hire him on Cameo when I'm dying. Ooh, what's this? Oh, we got a Brett sighting. Okay, this movie is chocked to the brim with Brett sighting. He's like a main character in this movie, but he's pretty inconsequential to the plot. He didn't have anything to do with the mystery that was being solved. He wasn't evil like the hot doctor that kind of looked like Caroline Polachek. He was just there and he was just Brett. I thought this movie was just okay, but having Brett there made it more fun. Maybe that was the point of his role. They knew it was boring, so they had to put a hottie in there. My big gripe with this movie is the age gap romance that buds. There's a whole love story between the two main characters, one of whom is a teacher and the other of whom is a high school student. They say she's 18, but who gives a shit? She's in high school. As someone who I assume is younger than the man and is definitely older than the girl, this one's like, yuck. The realest horror happening in this movie is that situation. I'm between a D tier and an E tier on this one because I didn't hate it, but I am not gonna watch it again. Although I could if I wanted to. Great. It was a good thing that this movie only cost me as much to buy as it would have to rent. For a smash or pass, I'll throw up at the parents, sure. Another person around to harass teachers, you know, bring in the reinforcements. Okay, from the director of Nacho Libre and Napoleon Dynamite comes Gentlemen Broncos in 2009. I can confidently say, without a shadow of a doubt, that I hated this movie. Basically, it's about an author, Ronald Chevalier, who's played by Jemaine Clement, who plagiarizes a sci-fi story from a homeschooled kid. Okay, I'll start with what I did like. I liked the actors, especially Hector Jimenez, always a standout. I liked that Ronald was always wearing a Bluetooth. Bluetooths are funny, I loved it.
My mind is a landscape of mystery, of thrills.
And Jennifer Coolidge. Smash. Mostly this movie was just but the things that I really didn't like about it were so strong, although brief, that they really took this movie to F tier. One thing about me is I have nasty emetophobia, and this movie really decided to test some hard boundaries I have with that. I had to skip a good, 8 minutes of this movie because that scene would just not end. And it wasn't funny enough to be that gross. The other arguably worse thing in this movie was that they used the T word, the transphobic slur. It's just written into the script. In 2009, when this was released, it was pretty much universally panned, but I tried to go in with a really open mind like I did with all of these, and I was done so dirty. I tried to like you, Gentlemen Broncos. I gave you the benefit of the doubt, and you betrayed me with vomit and slurs. You kidding me? Despite most of the reviews being negative, everyone pretty much agrees that Jemaine Clement was the best part of this movie. Some might even say the only good part. I'm of that same mind. I think that he did do a really good job, but not even that could save this movie from being so bad. I'm never watching this movie again, and if I could wipe my memory of ever having watched it, I would do that. Yeah, this one's an F tier. I didn't like it, if you can't tell already. Smash or pass? It's a pass. This whole movie is a pass. Everything about it is a pass. Let's move on. Have you gotten a good view of the shirt yet? This is a promotional item from Jackass 3D. Are you wearing the promotional item from Jackass 3D? Yeah, I am. Despicable Me 2010. This one was a surprise. Our boy Jemaine plays Jerry the Minion in this. How about that? It seems like everyone's seen this movie or is at least to some degree aware of the Minions. In fact, my most popular Tumblr post back on my old Tumblr back in the day was about how much I hate the Minions. You can imagine how it felt for me to see this come up on the IMDb page. Despicable Me is a movie about a guy with a bunch of minions who wants to steal the moon or whatever. Who cares? It's a found family movie, whatever. This is the first of 2 movies where Jemaine speaks in a made-up gibberish language, but we will get into that. The other one is really, really good. I'm very excited to talk about it. This one's cool because all the voices in the Minions are pitched up, so good luck even identifying which one Jerry is, and if you do that, good luck comprehending that it's Jemaine in there. Is it really? Is that really Jared Eaglelord? Is that really you, Marvin Action Fighter? Et tu, chaste man from Fizz 1999? In his defense, he only plays it in the first Despicable Me movie. Jerry, the Minion, comes back in the 3rd one, and he doesn't. I just know this from Wikipedia. I didn't watch all of them. I didn't even want to watch this one. I'm not crazy about this movie. I liked it when it came out in 2010 and I was a tween. I don't like it now in 2023. What more is there to say? Dude played a minion. Rating is an E tier for this one for me. I'm just not the audience for it. It's not a bad movie necessarily. It's my tier list and I didn't like it. What I say goes. Smash or pass to Do I have to say it? It's a pass. What can they even do? Do they even have dick? A few stinkers in a row here. This next one's Dinner for Schmucks, 2010. Okay, I didn't like this movie either. It's a very, like, 2000s cringe humor movie, and, like, not one of the better ones, I think. The premise is that Steve Carell plays said schmuck, a dude with a cool hobby that everyone thinks sucks. That was something I didn't like about this movie. Taxidermy's awesome. Paul Rudd plays somebody's mid-boyfriend who, in order to move up in the company he works for, has to participate in this event where everyone brings a clearly neurodivergent person to dinner so that everyone else can make fun of them behind their backs. Super cool thing to do, and that I think actually more of us should be doing. Now, today. Jemaine Clement plays Kieran, an eccentric artist, and I think honestly that he is again the standout of this movie. Bias? What bias? I don't have a bias. There's no bias. He gives his character, I think, like a real sincerity, which is lacking from every other character in the movie.
The thing about a goat is, it never denies itself what it's hungry for.
A goat could probably eat a bike.
Kieran could have just as easily been portrayed as just a one-note douchebag, but Jemaine brings layers to it, and he kind of makes him this eccentric guy who is self-obsessed, but I don't think he comes off as a jerk. I really loved that choice for this character, and I think that Jemaine does a great job of balancing some cringe with a lot of heart. He's described by a few different characters in the movie as having an animal magnetism, and I think that Jemaine kind of nails the female gaze thing. I probably won't be watching this movie again, and I don't necessarily recommend it unless you see it and go, oh, that's the kind of movie I like. But I can say that I did have a good time watching it because it was just fun to watch Jemaine. Also, Nick Kroll and Kristen Schaal were both in it, which was cool. I was excited to see them, especially with the collaborations that they've done. The rating I'm gonna give this one is an E tier. I'm just, again, not the right audience for it. I think that this movie may be good for people who like the movie Step Brothers, which might be controversial, but I don't really like that movie, despite loving John C. Reilly. And that's a clean smash for me. Hey, bud. My dog's kind of mad at me and I don't know why. So I had this whole thing written and recorded about how I couldn't get my hands on a copy of Predicament 2010 because for a long time I couldn't. I had recorded and edited a whole section about how I went about trying and failing to get the movie, even though it wasn't streaming in the US, and I could not get a copy of it legally or illegally. I even tried looking on eBay like I was able to with Diagnosis Death and did Patrick, which is coming later. It was available for streaming in New Zealand, so I got a VPN saying I was in New Zealand and tried to stream it, and that didn't work because it didn't want my American dollars. And then I tried to get a gift card, and like I tried to pay my American dollars for a gift card in New Zealand dollars and try and use that gift card to pay to rent the movie, and that didn't work either. In the end, I gave the overall experience an F tier, and I wasn't able to smash or pass the character because I didn't have enough information to make an educated decision on that. And we all know this is science-based. Well, guess what? About 2 months after I filmed and edited that, I was able to get my hands on the movie. That was very exciting because it finally completed my quest of seeing every movie that Jemaine Clement has ever been in, so that was pretty cool. I don't know what my dog is so upset about. He went potty, I gave him breakfast, he has water. I have no clue. I was able to get my hands on this with the help of an internet mutual, so Connie, I don't know if you'll ever see this, but thank you. And my dog says thank you too. All right, from the mind of Jason Sutter, who directed Diagnosis Death and Tongan Ninja, comes Predicament 2010. Come on, bud, you can get up. You're very distracting today. Come here. Oh yeah. Jemaine plays Spook, who was kind of, to me, giving off like goth Fred Armisen vibes. So I am going to say later in the Men in Black 3 review that that's the only movie that Jermaine's... So I am going to say in the Men in Black 3 review that that's the only movie that Jermaine's character actually dies in, but that's not true. I didn't know it at the time. He dies in this movie because his head gets lobbed off. And they don't let you forget it either. They keep showing his disembodied head like repeatedly, over and over again. This film is based on a novel by the same name, and it's like a crime comedy. We've got a bullied protagonist, a guy who comes into his life and pretends to be his friend so that he'll commit crimes with him, and then our friend Spook, who recently got out of jail. Okay, remember in Diagnosis... Why don't you say that to my fucking face? Come here. Come here, bud. I do not know what you need, my friend. Come here. Yeah, he's back. Remember how in Diagnosis Death I had a problem with the age gap romance of like a grown man and a teenager? Funny, I had that problem with this movie too. I don't know what this director's beef with having like normal romances is. Like, do they always have to be with teen girls? He agrees. In this movie, there's a guy that they're blackmailing. You're supposed to be like, oh no, they shouldn't be blackmailing him. He doesn't deserve it. But the blackmail they're using, the evidence they have, is pictures of him having relations with a 15-year-old girl. This guy is like a grown man. He's like the mayor of the city or something. And we're supposed to be like, oh, don't blackmail him. Like, no, actually, he shouldn't be doing that and he should get punished for it. My dog's chewing on an Amazon bag. I mean, maybe they should make it a whole public spectacle, but this guy shouldn't be going around having relations with 15-year-olds, right? So anyway, a grown man with a 15-year-old is nasty as hell. I don't understand why that was a repeated motif in this guy's movies. It didn't happen in Tongan Ninja, but do you know who co-wrote Tongan Ninja? Jemaine Clement. That's also why that was the best of the movies, I think. So, I don't know. No offense to Jason Sutter, but you'd be nothing without Jemaine. Look, man, I don't have a lot to say about this. It was enticing because I couldn't get my hands on it, and then I watched it and I was like, okay, well, a guy from Crowded House is in it, and Jemaine is in it, and it's one of those movies that I wouldn't have seen otherwise, and my life wouldn't have been any different if I hadn't seen it, so. I'm gonna put this one in the E tier. Not quite bad enough to be an F tier. It wasn't a horrible movie, but I was just like, who cares? A little bit. And then for a smash or pass, this one's a smash. This is sparkling water. Rio 2011. If only this film was as good as the Duran Duran song. I know that's a high bar, but still. In this one, Jemaine plays Nigel. I think he's a cockatiel, maybe he's a parrot of some kind. I really should have looked it up before I started filming. Rio was made by Blue Sky Studios, who you may know from other hit films such as Ice Age The Meltdown, Ice Age Dawn of Dinosaurs, Ice Age Continental Drift, and Ice Age Collision Course. Rio is like a movie about a woman who has a blue bird and then like loses him and they go to Rio or something. Oh, and also the boy bird meets a girl bird and they fall in love. One of the fun parts of the movie was that Jemaine plays a villain, Nigel, and he got to sing a villain song called Pretty Bird.
Feet to beak, super delicious.
And the maniacal laugh that he did for this bird was really, really good. His whole character trait is that he's ugly, and I'm like, are you though? I'm kind of into the bird. Overall, it was difficult to keep my attention on this movie. I don't really feel like I'm the target audience for this movie, and I'm not really ever into those movies where it's just a bunch of big name actors and that's the whole pull to see the movie. Who would even watch a movie just for the actors? Who would watch a movie just because one actor is in it? What kind of person would do a thing like that? Rating, this is a D tier. It was whatever. It was like, all right, I guess I watched it. This one's a smash, I think. Kind of in a way that like Teenage Simba or Max Goof or that one fish from Finding Nemo are. It's about charisma. I'm not necessarily trying to f*** a bird. Next up, we've got the Men in Black threequel from 2012. There are a few first and onlys in this one. First and only time he played an alien. First and only time his character actually dies. And it's the first and only threequel on this list. Men in Black 3 is a time travel movie where a bad guy goes back in time to kill Agent Old Guy, but then Agent Will Smith has to go back in time and in turn actually kill the bad guy. Jemaine, of course, plays the bad guy, Boris, and everyone kept calling him Boris the Animal, and he kept asking them not to. I was like, can we just respect Boris? Can we respect Boris's, like, wishes? With the whole revenge plotline, here's how I would have improved the movie. I would have made Boris and the old man agent exes. Everything else is the same. Agent Old Man still regrets not killing Boris when he had the chance, and Boris is still missing half of an arm at the hands of the old man. Okay, the best part about this movie is that it features that one Pitbull song from the summer of like 2012 about going back in time.
Back in time.
Other significant parts of this movie were when this one guy from Succession showed up, and this part. That reminded me of that one Riff Raff vine. Rating, that is a D tier. I enjoyed my time watching it, but I'm probably not gonna watch it again. This is the only one I've seen. I feel like maybe if I enjoyed this one, I should, I don't know, probably watch the first one. This is a right away smash, and I noted that at the very beginning, but then like an hour in, I was like, oh, it's like Worf. Like an alien humanoid with cool face and head prosthetics. I love a Klingon. Look. I got these two Worf action figures when I was off my meds briefly a few months ago. Not great, don't recommend that. And then when I was trapped in my house with my dog for a few months, I bought this. Yeah. It's Boris. This was $5 in total off eBay. I don't think that I was charged for shipping. The funniest part of this is that it comes with a ring, and I didn't know that until I opened it, and I was like, oh, I do. Okay, this next one's one of my favorites. What We Do in the Shadows 2014. Jemaine plays Vladislav the Poker. This entirely serious documentary centers around vampire flatmates, each from different eras of history. It's very slice of life, which I'm partial to, and it covers their preparation to go to the Unholy Masquerade, which is an event held by and for the undead that happens every year in the capital of New Zealand, Wellington. We already covered the short film from 2005 that this is based on, so now we'll dig a little deeper into that. This movie is also co-written and co-directed by both Jemaine Clement and Taika Waititi. This is just an overall favorite movie of mine outside of this project. It's hilarious, it's unpredictable, and at times it's kind of heartwarming. It's also, in my mind, the best representation of how vampires would act in the modern world. Like, for example, once Nick gets bitten, he gets drunk and tells everyone that he's Twilight from Twilight. I also think it's accurate that these vampires are not entirely straight. How do you live for centuries and not even test the waters? You gotta. Among those are some of my other favorite aspects of this movie, like how no one will use the chore chart that Viago has so lovingly crafted for the household.
The washing and the rubbish, I did that Deacon on dishes and it still hasn't moved.
Vladislav can never get the faces right anymore when he's transforming. The Beast.
This one is called the Beast.
And I said, get your hands off my balls, beast!
The Beast.
Once Jackie gets turned into a vampire, she has her husband be her familiar.
I love you.
I love you too.
Great. But I am your master.
The fact that it's an hour and a half. Thank you. This is the version of me that's editing this video, coming in to let you know that I found a Brett sighting in a really obvious spot, and end credits for What We Do in the Shadows. There he is, Brett McKenzie. I'd watched this movie a few times before I even knew Flight of the Conchords had a TV show, and I really didn't know who Jemaine was. I just thought it was a good movie. After watching Flight of the Conchords, I looked up Jemaine on IMDb, and I was like, oh my god, who was he in What We Do in the Shadows? The facial hair changes it. With no mutton chops and the mustache goatee combo, he's a different guy. Anyway, it was all downhill from there. It is easily one of the best movies on this list, and it is one of my favorites. It also got 2 different TV show spin-offs. One of them... Is that necessary? This also got 2 different TV show spin-offs, one of them being What We Do in the Shadows, which follows a different group of vampire housemates, the other show being Wellington Paranormal, which stars the 2 police officers from What We Do in the Shadows who work in the paranormal division of the Wellington Police Department. The What We Do in the Shadows TV show is really, really good, and Vladislav, Viago, and Deacon all make appearances in it a couple of times. The press junket for this movie is also a goldmine of funny interview clips. Jemaine and Taika just have a great chemistry and are fun to watch together. They even did a really funny radio spot for ZM FM TV in promotion for this movie where they answered phone calls on the radio, and that's where we got this clip from.
Song goes, but this one is a great one.
Don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. Vladislav. Hi, I'm Vladislav the Poker.
I also found out recently that the guy who plays Deacon actually does live shows as Deacon. His name is Johnny, but I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It is spelled B-R-U-G-H. This is an est... How long have you been in the shot? Oh my god. Oh well. It was gonna be in the shot anyway, I might as well show you my Thelma and Louise sticker. This is an S tier. I fucking love this movie. With or without the comparison of the other movies on this list, it's just such a great movie. Smash or pass? Smash. Smash, 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 smash. It is a strong smash. I know it's high stakes because he might kill me and eat me or whatever, but it is a smash. I will take those odds. Okay. Alright, we're going to take a brief detour now to go over some New Zealand actors, a lot of them actually, that have appeared in more than one thing throughout this project. What We Do in the Shadows has the most crossover of all the movies, except for Eagle vs. Shark, but I thought that would be too early in the video to do this, so we're doing it here about halfway through, in 2014. Starting off with Jackie Van Beek. In What We Do in the Shadows, she played Deacon's familiar, Jackie, and then in Eagle vs. Shark, she played a nameless meaty boy employee. She's also a filmmaker. She co-wrote, co-starred in, and co-directed The Breaker Upperers from 2018, and then she co-wrote and starred in Nude Tuesday in 2022. She is a genius, she is an icon, and she's a Taurus. What more could you ask for? Madeline Sammy is in What We Do in the Shadows as Moana, and like Jackie Van Beek, she's a nameless character in Eagle vs. Shark and is the co-director and co-writer and co-star of The Breaker Upperers. Corey Gonzalez-Mosser plays Nick in What We Do in the Shadows and is also in Eagle vs. Shark as Jared's friend Mark. Lauren Horsley plays Lily, or Dangerous Person, in Eagle vs. Shark and is also the mom in Diagnosis Death. Miranda Manassiadis was a meaty boy employee in Eagle vs. Shark and is also in Nude Tuesday in a really funny scene with Jemaine Clement toward the end, and she's also his real-life wife. Power couple, huh? You snoring. Don't interrupt me when I'm talking about Miranda Manassiadis. Ben Fransham plays Peter in What We Do in the Shadows and is also a ninja in Tongan Ninja. Taika Waititi plays Viago in What We Do in the Shadows. He voices Graham in Tongan Ninja. He's featured as a waiter in Futile Attraction, and he's Gordon in Eagle vs. Shark. You might also know him from a few other things. Karen O'Leary is in What We Do in the Shadows as the policewoman, Officer O'Leary, and we will soon watch her play another policewoman in The Breaker Upperers in 2018. And she's also in Nude Tuesday. Cone Holloway is a swearwolf in What We Do in the Shadows, and he's also Jared's friend Mason Hutchinson in Eagle vs. Shark, and he was Joe in The Breaker Upperers. Chelsea Florence is also in What We Do in the Shadows as the person that Jackie mistakes to be a virgin. She was also in Eagle vs. Shark as Jenny, and she's also in Nude Tuesday as Julie. Morag Hills plays a child vampire in What We Do in the Shadows, and she also plays Vinny, Jared's daughter, in Eagle vs. Shark. Then we've got Reese Darby. He's Anton, the main swearwolf in What We Do in the Shadows, and he's also the specialist in Diagnosis Death. And I know I said I wasn't going to talk about Flight of the Conchords, but he is Murray, the band manager in Flight of the Conchords. And while we're on the subject, Brian Sargent plays Jared's dad in Eagle vs. Shark, and he's also the bumbling New Zealand Prime Minister in Season 2 of Flight of the Conchords. And alongside him in Season 2, there's Lucy Lawless, who plays Paula, and she was in The Breaker Upperers as a client. Okay, last one, and I just figured this one out. Tim Finn from Crowded House is apparently the dad in Predicament 2010. So I just filmed that segment on Saturday. It is Tuesday now, just a few days later, and I just found out that Rachel House, who plays Nancy, Jared's sister in Eagle vs. Shark, is also the grandma in Moana. This is never going to get finished. I'm going to be working on this video for eternity because everyone in New Zealand knows each other. Oh my god, I hope I got everyone. I just connected the Tim Finn dots like the other day, and also the Brian Sargent dots I connected like a few weeks ago. It's insanity. No yawning. I'm excited. Yay! News Aotearoa. Yay! I feel like the Pepe Sylvia meme. I feel like Charlie Kelly.
Take a look at this. Jesus Christ, that right there is...
Next up, 2014's The Muppets Most Wanted, where Jemaine plays Prison King. This is one of my favorites of his roles. I'm very excited to talk about Prison King. The sequel to 2011's The Muppets immediately follows the events of the past movie. Like, immediately follows. We follow our friends the Muppets as they head out on a world tour with Ricky Gervais. Known transphobe. I used to be a fan of him. Kind of bummer. Jemaine plays Prison King, which is like a tertiary role, but a really memorable one. He gets to be in a musical number directed by Kermit the Frog. Some of us would kill to be able to do that, but I'm not allowed within 300 feet of Kermit. You don't need to know why. The good news is that we've got another Brett sighting. I just scared the shit out of my dog doing that. Brett McKenzie wrote all of the original songs for both the 2011 Muppets movie and this one. Plus he sings backing vocals on I'll Get You What You Want, Cockatoo in Malibu, which you can clearly hear. I'm singing cockatoo, yeah. There's a version available to stream that's just him singing it, and the backing vocals are exactly the same. Ooh, I'm singing cockatoo, yeah. You know, you connect the dots. If you're into the Muppets, I highly recommend this movie. It's just delightful. It's an easy watch. It's fun. It's simple. It's worth it. It would be cute to have on in the background, just like listening to the songs. Prison King doesn't get to sing any solos that were written by Brett, which I really would have liked to see, but he does participate in a few really, really fun musical numbers. Josh Groban gets a little bit of a solo, though, written by our boy Brett. Jemaine is featured prominently in a few numbers written by Brett, dancing and singing backup vocals, along with, like, Danny Trejo. He's got good beer. I like Danny Trejo's Mexican lagers. They do I Really Need This Job from a chorus line, and Prison King does get a solo in Working in a Coal Mine. Which I believe is originally by Alan Toussaint, but I just know it from my beloved Devo. I watched clips of all the songs I talk about here right before I started filming this, and it was fun to get a refresh on how much I loved that movie. I would put this movie in the B tier. I really did love it. It's a smash, obviously. What do you think, I'm stupid? You and I both know that the sport crown is a pussy magnet.
Oh Lord, I'm so tired.
Next up is Rio 2 from 2014. This movie is just called Rio 2, but if I was gonna name it, it would be called Rio 2, Oh God, They've Got Kids This Time, because oh God, they've got kids this time. I don't really know what was happening in this movie. There were like 17 concurrent plot lines. There was a bird race war. Bruno Mars was there. Jemaine, of course, reprises his role as Nigel, but this time he's got complex PTSD from the events of the last film. He also does a little Shakespeare, which is exciting for an ex-theater kid like me. I use ex loosely. I like that Kristen Chenoweth was in this movie, and there was a duet that she and Jemaine did. There was also a horrible bastardization of Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive, with a rap portion. Now is not the time, hip-hopopotamus. And I really started wondering with this one if Jemaine is really the best part of every bad animated movie he's in, or if I just have a bias. It's probably not the second thing though. When I wrote this review a few weeks ago, I put this movie in the E tier, I guess, which I think is a little generous, but I'll keep it there. Nigel was a smash, but he's a pass now, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what changed. It was the I Will Survive parody. Don't do that shit to Gloria Gaynor, dude. Okay, next up is People, Places, Things from 2015. In this movie, Jemaine plays the lead character, Will Henry. If there's one thing I learned from this project, it's that Jemaine was born to play hot dads. This one follows Will Henry, a graphic novelist, university lecturer, and father of twins, as he finds his footing again after a split from his partner. In the movie, they explicitly state that the two were never married, but they lived together and had twins that were 6 years old, so...
I thought you never wanted to get married. You said it was the surest way to ruin a relationship.
This is one of my favorites on the list, and it's kind of the reason that this project started, because it was the first non-Conchords thing that I seeked out, and I loved it so much that I knew I had to see more. A lot more. It's sweet, it's funny, it's heartwarming, it's an easy watch, and honestly, I was kind of moved by this story of a guy trying to find his footing again after a big split.
I'm just having a bad life. It'll be over eventually.
This is a good movie to watch on like a Sunday morning when you're just relaxing, you don't really have an agenda. This is definitely one that I'd recommend to anyone who likes a rom-com, whether or not they care about Jemaine Clement. I loved how the graphic novel art was incorporated into the visuals. I liked the pacing. I didn't think it was super predictable. It was just like overall a good movie. I don't know, my credentials aren't movie reviewer. My credentials are Jemaine Clement fan that had a little too much time on my hands for a few months. Another fun part of this movie was that there was a cameo from Alison Bechdel's Fun Home. I'm a fan of both the graphic novel and the musical, so that was exciting for me. I was watching an interview for this movie where he said he actually learned an American accent for the role, but they told him not to do it. We haven't covered it yet, but he does do an American accent for a few of the roles coming up, and
What's your American accent like?
I think it's quite annoying. It's quite an annoying guy.
well, okay, this movie's an A tier, and it's really one of those movies where it could be in the S tier if it wasn't compared to the ones in the S tier. It is a really solid movie. I loved it enough to start this whole project. Great film. As far as a smash or pass, I would let this dude So yeah, I guess smash, yeah. Coming up in 2015, we have Don Verdean. This one was directed by the same guys, Napoleon Dynamite and Gentlemen Broncos. And Napoleon Dynamite's a high bar, Gentlemen Broncos is a low bar, and this one I liked about in the middle. Jemaine plays Boaz in this. I was immediately hooked by the premise of this movie, which is about a Christian archaeologist who digs up fake biblical artifacts and passes them off as real. It follows the titular Don Verdean, played by Sam Rockwell, as he and Lazarus, played by Danny McBride, team up to showcase some legitimate biblical artifacts to get more church attendance. If I was gonna pick a standout in this movie, it would be Sam Rockwell, which is the case with a lot of movies Sam Rockwell is in. His character just takes the world in this situation so seriously, and when you're playing opposite people like Will Forte, Danny McBride, and Jemaine Clement, who are all silly billies, I think it makes for a really interesting character dynamic. This movie's stupid, but it's stupid in the right way. I also feel like there are some elements that could have the PC meter turned up just a hair, namely Jemaine playing an Israeli guy. I don't know if they'd do that in 2023. This movie goes in the D tier. If someone was like, hey, let's watch it, I'd be like, yeah, you know what? Let's watch it. This is a smash, but only because of the scene where he was dancing in the bar. Otherwise, it probably would have been a pass. He reminded me of an exotic bird. Okay, coming up in 2016, we've got Steven Spielberg's The BFG. We're gonna breeze through this one, I wasn't crazy about it. Based on the 1982 novel by Roald Dahl, The BFG follows Sophie as she is whisked away from the orphanage with the BFG, or Big Friendly Giant, to Giant Country. Together, they attempt to stop all the other giants from eating all the humans. I don't know, it just sounds like the circle of life to me. Animals eat plants, humans eat animals, giants eat humans, and then like, a big shark can eat the giants. I don't know. Maybe that's how I would improve this story. Jemaine plays the Flesh Lump Eater, brother to the BFG and leader of the Giants.
You has a delicious little bean.
Look, he did a great job. I didn't really care for this movie. Let's move on. This goes into E tier. I didn't like it, but if someone said they liked it, I would be like, okay, sure. This one's a pass. I just didn't care for the experience. Let's move on. Next up, in 2016, we've got Moana. It's a sort of coming-of-age movie about Moana of Moltunu setting out on a daring mission to prove herself as a master wayfinder, later befriending noted semi-demi mini-god Maui. I remember seeing this in the theater and being like, who is this Bowie dude? It's pretty far out, man. I would blast the soundtrack in my car in college, especially Shiny, going to like a cat-sitting gig or whatever.
I'd rather be shiny like a treasure from a sunken pirate wreck.
I am a huge fan of Tamatoa. I love a villain, I love a villain song, I love a little bit of a queer-coded villain. In my mind, Shiny is up there with Be Prepared and Poor Unfortunate Souls, the other two best queer-coded Disney villain songs. This is funny because it's one of my experiences with Jemaine before I knew who he actually was, and he definitely stuck out to me. You know, I've said a million times in all the animated movies he sticks out to me, he really does. So nice work, Jemaine. And also Lin-Manuel Miranda. He's also got two forms, which is so iconic, so badass. He gets to be all glowy for part of it. Jemaine is just an excellent voice actor. He was a standout in every animated movie he was in except for Despicable Me. I would think it would be fun for the animators to work on his parts because he's so expressive with his voice. I have for real been listening to Shiny on repeat since I started this project. This is a big A+, big A+ for this one. I'm a little worried it's gonna be a little too high up in my Spotify top songs, but I can't predict that. I also watched this movie once for the project, and then a few different times I went back and watched just the Tamatoa part. I can't get enough of the dude. One other random thing, Maui not being able to transform right is so Vladislav coded with not being able to get the phases right. Okay, last thing, I was Googling this movie and I got jump scared by Taika Waititi. Apparently he co-wrote it. You guys can do stuff separately. You know that, right? This one goes in the B tier. Probably one of my favorite Disney movies. Absolutely love it. And this one's a smash for sure. It is a super smash. It is a hard smash. Hard and fast. Done. Smash. I love this giant crab. So I said to her, breakfast for champions. I said breakfast for champignon. That's French for mushroom. Sit. Not quite. Kind of embarrassing for me. I do have the camera rolling. Down. You were already doing it. Next up is the Lego Batman movie. Jemaine in this plays Sauron.
Good afternoon, Gotham City.
Another villain character, yes please. This movie is simply delightful. I've seen it a few times over the years, and every time I go to watch it, I'm like, there's no way it's as good as I remember. It's always as good as I remember, if not better. Lego Batman is a found family movie about getting all the bad guys back into the Phantom Zone. So with Rio, the whole draw for the movie was the celebrity voice actors, but for Lego Batman, the movie's already so good on its own, and then it's actually really fun to pick out the celebrity voices. It's like a little game. Everybody's in this movie. Jenny Slate's in it. The best part of this movie, as it pertains to this video, is that because Jemaine played Sauron, he is now a part of the greater Lord of the Rings canon. And do you know who else is a part of the greater Lord of the Rings canon? I'll give you one guess. My dog hates this. I'm sorry. Oh. Everybody knows that like every movie in the Lord of the Rings franchise was filmed in New Zealand, and apparently it's not uncommon for residents of New Zealand to have been in the movie.
I'm from Wellington, which is where Peter Jackson makes the films, so it's not that uncommon to be in them.
So Brett was in one of the Lord of the Rings movies as like an elf extra. He was on screen for about 3 seconds, he had no lines, but people noticed him. Looking into this, I found out that he was an unnamed character, but he was lovingly dubbed Figwit by some fans. Apparently she and her friends referred to him as Legolas for the thinking woman. It's genius. I love these bitches. We are kindred spirits. The Wikipedia article for Figwit is a riot, and I'll link it in the description because it's so funny and it's so worth a read. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way. I'm laughing with these people, obviously. I live in a glass house, I shouldn't be throwing any stones. So Figwit stands for Frodo was great, who is that? Basically that means that even though Brett was on screen for about 3 seconds, he's such a pretty boy that he really struck a few people. I don't blame them, at all. There's actually a documentary about this phenomenon that was made by Brett's then girlfriend, now wife, back in 2004. And on the subject of Brett being a pretty boy, I was reading this Guardian article that was an interview with Flight of the Conchords from like 2008, and the author describes Brett as the following. Straightforward, gobsmackingly beautiful, fine-featured, and flawlessly skinned. I love journalism. Which review is this? Oh, Lego Batman's an A-tier movie. It's so good. It's fun for all ages, fun for the whole family. What, 0 to 99? Is that what the Lego packages say? As far as a smash or pass, I'd smash Figwit. It's my game, it's my rules. Now moving on to a film called Humor Me from 2017. In this one, Jemaine plays a guy named Nate. Jemaine once again portrays one of my favorite characters that he does, which is sad, artsy, divorced guy. In the midst of a divorce, a hefty case of writer's block, and straight up just being broke, Nate has to move to his father's retirement community with him, which is a surprisingly lively place to hang. Ingrid Michaelson's in this one as the love interest, which I thought was pretty cool because I only know her music and I like it. I didn't know she acted. She's kind of an alt-manic pixie dream girl situation. It's pretty fun. A key part of this film is that the father would skirt serious conversations by telling these long-form jokes, and the camera would cut away to these black and white portions portraying the jokes. I thought that was cool. Tonally, I thought it worked really well. All right. It is time to address the accent. Look, I think it's pretty obvious at this point in the video that I have a really deep respect for what Jemaine does, a reverence even. I've said a million times that I think that he's the best part in a lot of movies that he's in. I think that he's got this really magnetic, really compelling energy about his characters that he plays. There's something about it that's so unique to him and nobody else could quite do it the same way, I think. And I don't want to come off as rude because it's obvious that he cares deeply and really works on his craft. I have one real criticism, and it's that the American accent needs a little work. Jemaine does give a great performance here, but there were just moments that I felt like the inflection was different than what I felt it should be, and I am pretty sure that the problem was the accent. Because I haven't really felt that with Jemaine when he's been able to use his native accent. That being said, his portrayal of middle-aged divorcees is always a highlight for me, and I think this one's worth watching. If someone was seeking out Clement-specific movies, this might not be the first on the list that I would recommend to them, but it's really heartfelt and sweet, and I'm glad I watched it. Also, Lilith from Frasier was in this, and that was very important to me. Isn't that right, Niles? This movie gets a C tier. I liked it. Maybe I'd have it on in the background. Maybe I'd show it to somebody. Cool movie. This one's a pass because I think he'd be boring. Let's move on. Next in the lineup, we've got Brad Status from 2017. Okay, I liked this movie, but he wasn't in it that much, so let's just get into it. Brad Status is the story of a father who lives in Sacramento, which is special to me because I lived there for like 2 years, who's basically in the middle of a midlife crisis because he's envious of everyone else's lives because they seem from the outside so much better than his. This movie has a banging cast with Jemaine, obviously, but also Ben Stiller, Michael Sheen, Luke Wilson. I was like, what is the budget for this movie with all of this leading man material? Jemaine plays Billy, a college friend of the titular Brad who made a fortune when he sold his company and then moved to Maui to be in a lady dude throuple. He's American again in this one. The laid back, like, California coastal lingo that they wrote in the script for him was everything to me.
Come to the island sometime, brother. Later.
This was pure gold to me, honestly, because I am from California and I just kind of talk like that. He also has a dog in this movie, which I loved. Love to see a dog. And also, as soon as I heard his voice, ooh, I can't say that on YouTube. The message of this movie reminded me of the word sonder, which is always on those listicles. It's like, here's 10 words that you didn't know, but the posts have been circulating for like a decade, so yeah, I actually did know the word sonder. Anyway, sonder is defined as the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. Throughout this movie, Brad imagines what his friends from college are up to, imagining them having great families and tons of money, and overall just being happier and having better lives than he does. As the movie progresses, however, he comes to find out that everyone's got their own struggles and even outright personality flaws. It can be so easy to get in your head about what everyone else is doing, or rather what it seems like they're doing, and it can be difficult to recall that just because someone portrays a great life doesn't mean that they're always happy. Brad comes to realize that he has a wife and son who both love him very much, and that maybe it was good that he started a nonprofit right out of college instead of selling out like the rest of his friends did. Wouldn't it be nice if we could all sort out our life crises in just an hour and 40 minutes? This is a cute, like, father-son movie to watch. I feel like if I was someone's son, I'd be moved by this movie the way I was moved by Bo Burnham's 8th grade. Okay, wrapping up here. The whole time the score was reminding me of something I couldn't quite place. Danny Elfman kept coming up in my mind because there was something about a reoccurring motif that reminded me of something from like The Nightmare Before Christmas. But when the credits rolled, I learned that the music was done by Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo. I'm gonna pop this one, boom, right into the C tier. And for a smash or pass, I am gonna pass. This guy's a tool. I like that he's in a queer throuple, but he's kind of over it. Hello. Next up, in 2018, we've got An Evening with Beverly, Luff, Linn, which is another movie with a stacked cast. In this one, Jemaine plays Colin Keith Threadner, and the Keith is important because it's a family name. In short, An Evening with Beverly, Luff, Linn follows Aubrey Plaza, who plays Lulu, who runs off from her marriage in pursuit of a past love. I felt like I could really feel the inspiration for this one. I was getting a little David Lynch, I was getting a little John Waters, I was getting a little Wes Anderson with the wardrobe and the uncomfortable characters and the settings. This one was kind of difficult for me to form a full opinion of because for all of the parts that I really loved, there were parts that I kind of hated. The big thing is that I'm really just not into potty humor. It's just not funny to me. But at the same time, this is just the kind of offbeat diamond in the rough comedy that I would love, and I do? I don't know. The wardrobe and sets were also so cool throughout the movie that even if I wasn't into any of the comedy, it would still be fun to watch just for that. I think I liked it better that it was either 0 or 100 for me because I was never bored. I would recommend this movie to you if you like Twin Peaks and Tim Robinson's I Think You Should Leave. It's not mysterious or suspenseful in the same way Twin Peaks is, but something about the strange world of the movie was giving me that kind of essence. I Think You Should Leave is one of my favorite sketch shows and just one of my favorite shows in general, and I think the comedy was kind of making me feel that same uncomfortable but funny feeling that I Think You Should Leave gives me. Like I said before, the cast in this movie is excellent. We've got Aubrey Plaza and of course Jemaine Jemaine Clement, but then we've also got Maria Bamford, Craig Robinson, Zach Cherry from Severance, and that one episode of Succession where Roman goes to that like 6 or 8 week management training course is in this. There's Roman. That's my little homie Romy. There he is. That's my little homie Romy. And Matt Berry. I want to sidebar real quick and say that my favorite thing Matt Berry has ever done is when he was in that episode of Portlandia as the children's entertainer.
Master Fuzzy Bunny and his lucky ball leads the way.
That was my first experience of him, and I was like, I have to see more. I know this guy's a superstar. And now I've watched the What We Do in the Shadows TV show where he plays Laszlo, and I'm never disappointed. I'm never disappointed by Matt Berry.
You say you're from Tucson, but you talk all fancy and Europe-like.
This is the way we talk in Tucson, Arizona.
In the end, I could definitely think of some people to recommend this movie to, but I don't know that I would recommend to every single person. Like I said, I don't really think potty humor is very funny, and I'm not usually into that kind of cringe humor where you just feel bad for the characters, but at the same time, I really loved other parts of this movie. This is one of the earlier movies that I watched in this project, but I'm still thinking about this one part toward the beginning where they're eating spaghetti and meatballs, but it's like spaghetti and like one giant meatball, and it reminded me of that part in Eraserhead where they're eating like the weird tiny chickens. Maybe that was the David Lynch thing I picked up, I don't know. This one was kind of hard for me to suss out my feelings on, so I'm just not going to rank it. And I also am kind of 50-50 on whether I would smash or pass Colin, so I'm not going to rank him either. Cool. Then I guess we're done with this review then.
This is catchy, right?
The Breaker Upperers. Ow! Breaker Upperers 2018. Oh, we're in for a good one. Jemaine is listed as Tinder date in this one. He looks like Albert Einstein. He's there for like 30 seconds.
Can you look at me, please? Not like that.
Who cares? I want to talk about Jackie Van Beek. Jackie Van Beek is one of the co-writers, co-directors, and co-stars of this movie, and the more that I saw about her during this project, the more I was like, why didn't I just make a movie about Jackie Van Beek? A movie? I mean, video. The Breaker Upperers is about two women who will provide a service for their customers where they will break up with their partner for them, whether that's by song or by faking someone's death. But one begins to develop a conscience about the whole thing and it throws off their system. Watching this movie felt like watching Broad City, which is one of my favorite shows of all time, and it's been off the air for a few years. It felt so good to watch this. I have this thing about messy, horrible women being really feminist portrayals, like Dee Reynolds from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Shiv Roy from Succession as two examples. Too often, women are written into roles where they're just the voice of reason, while men get to be funny and act stupid. It happens more and more now, but it still makes me so happy to see just a straight up messy, delusional female character. Same goes for bi-representation. A few years ago, no one would say the B word, but in this movie, Mel is explicitly bisexual, and I was just like, slay. I felt seen. It took me getting like 13 movies deep to even get to know Jackie Van Beek, and then another like 5 after that to watch this one. But once she was on my radar, she was on my radar. Now she's got a permanent spot on my radar, and I'm thinking about watching every movie that she's ever done. Honestly and genuinely, one of the best parts of working on this project is getting to know who Jackie Van Beek is and getting to have the things that she's made in my life now. So like I said, Jemaine is credited as Tinder date in this movie, and he's really just at the very beginning. And while I was taking notes for this one, very early on, I wrote, who cares about Jemaine? This movie already rules, before he even came on screen. He's at like the very beginning. Needless to say, this one was a hit. This movie made me feel so good. I love a story about women who are friends. I love stories about women who aren't just like 25. I love that there's character growth, but they're still messy at the end. Jackie Van Beek, you are Meryl Streep to me. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. Girl power, feminism, love wins. This one is an A tier. Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Watch this movie. A tier. Smash or pass, sorry, Jemaine who? I don't know that guy. This is about Jackie Van Beek. Don't bring him up anymore. This is about Jackie Van Beek. Next up is 2018's The Festival, wherein Jemaine plays Robin, someone's stepdad. Or not stepdad, boyfriend of someone's mother. The Festival follows Nick, a recent college grad who gets dumped during the graduation ceremony by his girlfriend, and I don't really blame her because he was kind of acting a fool. Anyway, Nick and his friend Shane go to this 3-day music festival to make him feel better, and they go do music festival things like get all money and trip on psychedelics and stimulants. Remember, drugs are cool and they are good for you. There was a woman in this movie who I was like, oh my god, I totally know who that is, but I cannot figure it out. So I went and looked at her IMDb, and she is Stede Bonnet's wife in Our Flag Means Death, the gay pirate show. That one's sort of in the greater New Zealand verse. Jemaine plays Robin, the best friend character's mom's boyfriend.
You really didn't have to come? Hey, don't mention that. I wouldn't have missed this for the world, Shane.
I think that Jemaine was very handsome in this role. There's something about a silly old guy that's just so special to me. He shows up a few times throughout this movie, which was cool because I expected him to only be in like the first bit, but he was in like 3 bits. And it was very exciting for a person of my disposition. This was one of the last movies I watched for this project, basically because the poster didn't really strike me as something I wanted to see, but I actually liked it a lot. It's something that I think I especially would have loved in high school when I was watching like Skins, that British teen drama. By 2018, I was well out of high school, but at least I know I like it in 2023. There were a few cameos in this movie that I went absolutely crazy for, one of them being Nick Frost as a tattoo artist, and the next, this is a big spoiler, Noel Fielding was Hammerhead. I didn't know anything about this movie outside of the fact that Jemaine Clement was in it, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have watched it, and I was like, I had no idea that either of them were in it. It was very exciting. It was very exciting to go in cold. Okay, last 2 things about this movie. One is that there was a fun festival montage set to Mr. Brightside by The Killers. And second, I think that there was a reference to this video of the Cybergoths dancing under the overpass. Thank you, Cybergoths, for your service. Nothing but respect for the troops. I'm gonna put this one in the C tier. I expected it to be one that I like did other things while I was watching, but I was actually really engaged. This one's also a smash. Be for fucking real.
Well, it's the same room, but everything's different.
I'm cheating a little bit with the next one. It's Flight of the Conchords live in London from 2018. Jemaine doesn't play a character necessarily, except the characterization of himself that he does on stage. I know that I said I wasn't going to cover any Flight of the Conchords stuff, but there was this one day when I watched a few movies in a row that I really didn't care for, Rio and Rio 2, and I had watched another movie earlier that day that I liked an exhausting amount, which was Tongan Ninja, so I wanted to watch something that was reliable. I don't think this one needs a summary, really. It's just a straight up live comedy show. Okay, we are taking a tangent. My first experience of Flight of the Conchords was in my high school ceramics class. I had a Ninja Sex Party Pandora station, and I would skip every Flight of the Conchords song. For the most part, I was just like, skip, I want to hear NSP, I want to hear Starbomb, I want to hear Tenacious D. The one Flight of the Conchords song that I really remember was Hurt Feelings, and to this day, that's like my favorite of their songs. I specifically remember the way Brett said Made in Manhattan. Made in Manhattan.
They're all lined up to watch that movie, Made in Manhattan.
And that stuck in my brain for years afterward. So a little while ago, when I found out that the show was available to stream on HBO Max, I put it on my watch list. And I immediately fell in love with it. When I get into something on a really deep level, one might call it a hyperfocus, a hyperfixation, perhaps. I always joke that I don't choose the media chooses me. And what I mean by that is that I don't go and watch something and go, oh, I'm gonna go ahead and hyperfocus on this for the next few months. I've tried that, doesn't work like that. I don't get to pick. It's more like I watch something or listen to something or whatever it is, and a switch flips in my brain, or wires get crossed, or synapses fire in just the right way that I want to begin a deep dive. And these things become very important to me. I make a lot of silly jokes in this video, but really what's behind all of it is a deep, deep appreciation. It's just easier to hide behind humor than vulnerably and authentically say, I love this. Because it's embarrassing to love things, and it's embarrassing to want things. And I want to make something about something I love, so you do the math. Okay, all that sappy personal shit aside, this is an S tier. As far as a smash or pass, I'm not gonna rate the real human man, Jemaine Clement. That's not the point of this. A smash feels inappropriate and a pass feels rude. So instead, in the footsteps of the great duo Stana and Anats, I'm going to smash my doppelganger. That's a reference to a song named Stana from the comedy special where an evil man meets his doppelganger named Anats and they end up falling in love and raising big cats together.
They became lovers, well that's the rumor.
Next, we'll go over Patrick, or DePatrick, from 2019. You may notice that I'm holding a copy of it in my hand. This is another one I had to buy off of eBay like Diagnosis Death. When I was researching to try and find this before just opting to buy the DVD, I came across a listicle that was like 12 things you didn't know about Flight of the Conchords. I was like, first of all, don't assume what I do and don't know about Flight of the Conchords. It makes you look stupid. One of the items was titled, Jemaine is carving out a niche in nudist cinema. And they chose like the world's cheesiest picture of him. I would have chosen a picture of Tamatoa. That's just me. This movie cost me about $20, and I knew that if I wanted to see every single movie on this list, I would have to buy or rent some of them. I tried to set zero expectations whatsoever for all of these, but especially the ones that I paid real money for. I didn't want to skew the ranking by subconsciously expecting more from the ones that I spent actual money on. I kept trying to remind myself that my goal was just to see the movies. Besides, by the time I had watched this, I had already seen stuff like Nude Tuesday, Tongan Ninja, Muppets Most Wanted, like stuff that I really loved that made it worth watching all the bad movies. So if the ones I ordered off of eBay were losses, I knew I could take it because I had already found a few movies that made it worth the bad ones, you know? Even in attempting to set up zero expectations, Patrick 2019 wildly defied what I expected. Patrick, I believe, is a Belgian movie, so none of it is in English except for the parts Jemaine is in. Patrick is the name of our leading man who lives out in a nudist colony with his mother and father. His father owns the campsite where they live, and there are a few other permanent residents there as well. Patrick makes these gorgeous chairs, and pretty early on he realizes that one of his hammers is missing. When his sickly father passes away, it's up to him to run the campsite, but he's preoccupied trying to find his missing hammer. You start to realize that it's not really about the hammer, and that the movie's a lot more existential than that. This movie's really telling a story of grief and a journey of acceptance. I know I've said it before, and spoilers, I will say this one more time after this, but this movie feels kind of beyond my vocabulary to describe how good it is. So I feel a little foolish trying to review it. Some of these feel more like an expression of appreciation than what I would call a review. That being said, one thing I noticed was that it was really beautifully and artfully shot. I'll put just a few of the moments that really stood out to me on screen here. Weird that they chose to have a watermark over the movie, which is totally their fault, not because I was using a free version of a program to play the Blu-ray on my computer. This one's on them. Jemaine plays Dustin Apollo, who is a very famous musician. He's kind of bare minimum polite, but he feels like he's being so gracious by bestowing the person he's talking to the honor of his presence and his focus. He seems like the kind of celebrity who would hang out with like Morrissey or John Mayer, if you catch my drift. Douchebags. His character here is vaguely reminiscent of Kieran from Dinner for Schmucks and Ronald Chevalier from Gentlemen Broncos, and this trio happens to make up my Nightmare Blunt rotation. Dustin, of course, has his own nuances and quirks, though. This movie is much more grounded in reality than Dinner for Schmucks or Gentlemen Broncos, and so is Dustin Apollo, even though he's astronomically famous, apparently. Or so he thinks, at least. Also, costuming put him in these little jorts that I was obsessed with. Last couple of points before we move on, this was the only movie that made me tear up. I don't want to spoil too much in case you do get a chance to see the movie, but I will say that it wasn't necessarily a sad cry, it was more like experiencing catharsis with the main character. This movie really took me there, in such a way that when I took my dog out after I finished the movie, I was like, oh right, I'm not in a forest in Belgium, I'm in the American Midwest. So take that as you will, I was immersed. And the whole movie does take place in a nudist colony, so don't watch it if you don't want to see a bunch of old dude dicks, but do watch it if you love good cinema. I'm not really bothered by nudity in movies and TV, especially when it's so normalized like this, but it's definitely something you should know before getting into it. I'm putting this one in the B tier. I really liked it. It was the most money I paid for one of these, and it was worth it. I'm probably gonna watch it again. This one's a smash, and it is for one reason: the jorts. I Used to Go Here is a movie from 2020 that follows Kate, who is an author on the precipice of getting her debut novel published. She's invited by David, her former professor, played by Jemaine Clement, to come and speak at her old school, so she shows up to that small town for a visit.
David Kirkpatrick brought me down to do a reading.
Kate was in my very first class.
One of the first things I noticed about this movie, besides the fact that Britta Perry is in the lead role, is that it's a Lonely Island production. This was one of the later movies that I watched in this process, but I would have bumped it way higher up on the list if I had known it was a Lonely Island production. Jorma Taccone was even in it in a scene with Kate Micucci, who is one half of one of my other favorite comedy bands, Garfunkel and Oates. So in this movie, let's recap, we've got Jemaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords, Jorma Taccone from The Lonely Island, and Kate Micucci from Garfunkel and Oates. That's... for me, it's the collab of the century. Given its status as a Lonely Island production, I'm pretty sure I would have come across this movie had I not done this project. I wonder what that alternate universe version of me is doing now. If that version of me saw Jemaine Clement on the screen and was immediately struck by Cupid's proverbial arrow, I'd have to imagine that's what happened. I believe that my love of Jemaine Clement exists in all universes, even the one where I'm just a little gecko sunning myself on a rock. I know I can feel it in my little gecko heart. Anyway, I enjoyed this movie. I can't actually think of a Lonely Island production that I don't like, so... alright. It sort of reminded me of the experience I had while watching the festival, where like watching a college movie while you're in college feels a certain way, watching a high school movie when you're in high school feels a certain way, and watching a movie about being out of college, which is what I am, also feels a certain way. I don't necessarily relate to certain decisions made by Kate in this movie, but I think she's fun. This one goes in the C tier. I liked it and I'd probably watch it again. Simple as that. And I'm gonna pass because this dude's a scumbag. Or is it a pass? Yeah, it's a pass. Or is it? No, I think it actually has to be a pass because I think I'm a little too old for what this guy's interested in. The time has finally come for us to talk about Nude Tuesday 2022. This movie could honestly be its own video. There is so much to say about it. I ended up going down a deep rabbit hole with this one. I had to write this review twice because once I had already finished it, then I found out that the movie has a companion podcast where they delve into the process of making it. This companion podcast is hosted by Tim Batt, who is someone that I already knew about from The Worst Idea of All Time and Till Death Do Us Blart, which are 2 podcasts that I listen to. I've heard the joke a few times that everyone in New Zealand knows each other, so it was kind of funny to have somebody that I knew from something else show up in this project, which is heavily New Zealand based. Even aside from having to write it twice, this review took the longest to finish. Especially after listening to the podcast, I just kept revising and revising and revising because I really wanted to do this phenomenal movie justice. Eventually I had to just stop rewriting and go with what I had. There is a part of me that feels like I kind of lack the vocabulary to explain just how brilliant this movie is, but I'm gonna do my best. More than anything, I would just like to encourage you to find this movie and watch it because it's really, really good. And then if you feel so moved, listen to the companion podcast. This is Nude Tuesday, or Nokin Tease Dog. It's about a middle-aged couple whose marriage is failing, so as an anniversary gift, they get like a certificate to go to a new age sex retreat out in the woods. In this one, Jemaine Clement plays Bjorg Rasmussen, who is leading the retreat. He kind of has cult leader vibes, but like not really, because it's pretty clear that everything done in the movie is consensual. There are a few notable people in this movie, but one that really sticks out to me is none other than Jackie Van Beek, who you might recall me talking about during the Breaker Uproars and What We Do in the Shadows, and how much I said that I loved her in both of those. She and Armand Valentine both wrote the movie, and then Jackie starred in it and Armand directed it. The kicker is that this whole movie is in what's described as a speelang, or spontaneous language. And that is directly from Perry Percy, the movie's dialect coach who invented this language. So like Klingon would be another example of a speelang. All of the actors were given the script that was written in regular English. They improvised all of their lines in the speelang, and then once it was edited and finished, they handed it over to different people who hadn't seen the script to give it the subtitles. The people subtitling never saw the script. They just were given the movie and wrote subtitles based on what they thought everyone should be saying. What I didn't know also until listening to the podcast is that there are 2 versions of this movie. There's 2 different sets of subtitles you could possibly see. I watched the Julia Davis version, and that was also the one that Tim Batt had watched when he recorded the podcast. This is one of the most unique movies I've ever seen, and it absolutely killed me. It was fascinating, it was hilarious, it was well performed, it was deep, it was emotional, it was funny. There were even re-recordings of existing songs in the speelang, like they do for The Sims. Most notable to me were Road to Nowhere by Talking Heads and Islands in the Stream by Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton. The music coordinator for this movie had worked on stuff like Reservoir Dogs and Office Space and a bunch of other notable films with notable soundtracks. The whole time I was watching the movie, I was like, man, I would love to hear from the intimacy coordinator that I assume they have because it seems like it would be necessary for a movie of this nature. And while listening to the podcast, I got to hear an interview with her. An intimacy coordinator is someone who's brought on as a consultant to like movies and TV shows to make sure that all intimate scenes are done safely and comfortably for everyone involved. So she basically said that she met with everyone individually, and then she met with all the men and all the women, and together they all kind of made a list of do's and don'ts that were to be followed by the cast and the crew. It should have already been happening, and it's kind of lame that it's so new, but it is really exciting to hear jobs like intimacy coordinator come up more and more in media. One of my very favorite parts of this film is how it demystifies the human body, and this was done in Patrick too, where it's just normal. I'm not really bothered by the human body, but I was surprised to find that there is in fact full frontal nudity in this movie. Maybe you're smarter than me and assumed that when you heard the title, that there's nudity. The actors are all of a variety of ages and body types, and once you get over the initial shock of everyone being naked, you're like, oh, it's just normal. And you start to wonder why nudity, our default state, is such a problem. This is frequently spoken about on the podcast because it's so integral to the movie and it's so uncommon. It was a lot of these actors' first role that they had to be nude for, and everyone that spoke to Tim Batt that I heard basically said that initially it was scary to be so vulnerable, but with a cooperative cast and crew and an excellent intimacy coordinator, the overall experience ended up being one of strong connection and of like a family dynamic. The problem with this project is I can only spend so much time on each movie, and I can only retain so much. And I wasn't able to sit with any one movie very long because I had to keep moving and grooving on to the next one. Let me remind you, there are 32. This is the only one that I went down such a deep rabbit hole with because I was so fascinated by it. I loved this movie. I'd love to watch it like 100 more times and just really absorb it for all that it is, knowing what I know from the podcast especially. This is one that I will not be forgetting soon, and I have not forgotten since I watched it, and I will be rewatching again. I have watched it twice now. Okay, I've done my best to describe it. It's really just worth watching. Go find it. Okay, last couple things before we move on. I mentioned this before when we took our detour, but Jemaine's actual real-life wife is in this, and they have a very funny scene together at the end. Superstars, power couple, we love it. Next, Jemaine got mild hypothermia while filming this, and you'll see why. Toward the end of the movie, there is this big, like, ice pool. I think I have to imagine it's sub-zero temperatures, and toward the end of this movie, there's this big pool on the top of a mountain, and it's very, very cold. Don't make that for nothing. Please watch this movie. This is S-tier movie. This is one of my absolute favorites. This is one of my top movies of this whole thing. It was worth it for me to watch every bad movie because I got to see this one movie that I loved. I'd watch Gentlemen Broncos 5 times just for one time getting to see this movie. I'm serious. It's so good. And for a smash or pass, this one, like, it's a smash, but I don't know if I'd want to hang out with Bjorg, so I guess I hit it and quit it. I don't know.
És tu per Argentin type agente?
Nie. Droga jest litry.
Okay, let's get through this one. This is Don't Make Me Go 2022, a movie where a dad and a daughter go on a road trip. The dad finds out that he has a terminal illness but doesn't tell the daughter, so the two go to New Orleans to meet the daughter's mom, who's been absent since the daughter was a baby. This movie is very sad, and I'm never watching it again. It was a beautiful movie. It was a well-told, emotional story. I'm just never gonna watch it again. This is another that Jemaine was only in for one scene, and like, he was great, whatever. He plays Dale the douche, the guy that John Cho's character's wife left him for.
Okay. Great to see you, man. Yeah.
I was worried that because this character was a friend from college that I'd have to endure another American accent, but it was all good. He used his native accent.
Let me buy you a drink. It's an open bar.
Yay, Aotearoa. Oh, and Jemaine gets a fight scene with John Cho. That was fun.
Is this what a midlife crisis is?
No.
This is gonna go in the D tier, not because it was a bad movie, but it just made me sad. Whatever, it's my tier list. I put the movies where I want the movies to go. It's a quick complainer, I'm gonna move Eagle vs. Shark down a tier. I'm not fucking around, I'll do it. This is a pass. There was nothing interesting about this man, and we are so close to being done with these movies, so let's keep moving. I have no consistency with my framing whatsoever, but that's just me, baby. Can you picture that? DC League of Super Pets 2022. Hear me out on this one. When I realized that I had totally overlooked a movie from his IMDb page and it was not on my watch list, it was later in the evening, and I had already consumed a little gummy. The kind of gummy that you can only get in some states and you can't get in others. But places like Colorado, California, Oregon, easy. I wasn't really doing anything. So I thought there's no time like the present, and I put it on. So just understand that that's the state my mind was in when I watched this movie and took notes on it. And I won't be rewatching it, so this is all we've got. Crypto the Superdog and Superman are the best of friends until Superman gets kidnapped. Ooh. Crypto now must team up with a ragtag group of misfits to find Superman and save the day. Jemaine plays Aquaman, which I was very excited about because I really, really love fishmen. It was cool that they had Aquaman be Polynesian. I'm not really into superheroes, so it did take me a moment to remember that Jason Momoa has been playing Aquaman for years. But still, representation is cool, and it's important. Growing up, I always saw white Aquaman, so it's just cool to see. Representation is good. I'm pro-representation. The group of superheroes that aren't Superman were not in this very much, and when they were, they did not always talk. It felt like that one episode of Portlandia where they're at the basketball game watching the cheerleaders, and Fred Armisen's character is like, let them speak.
Let them speak! Allow them to talk!
Really, I would have just liked to see more of Jemaine as Aquaman. Bring back Aquaman 2024. Give him a spin-off. This movie overall had great representation. There were like 2 explicitly gay couples in it. That endeared me to the movie pretty early on. I was like, okay, now I'll give it a chance. I legitimately laughed exactly one time during this movie, and it was because of Natasha Lyonne's turtle character.
What just happened? No, seriously, what just happened? I can't see.
And then there was one other part that I thought was funny but didn't like really make me laugh, and it was when one of the characters called Crypto Narc Kent. On one hand, I did think this movie was cute, and on the other hand, I had read a quote from Guillermo del Toro like the same day that I watched this movie that kind of perfectly encapsulated it and just the overall genre of modern kids movies. The quote goes like this. Getting more specific, he went on to detail what he despises about certain lazy proclivities in commercial animation, notably how characters and emotions are codified into a sort of teenage rom-com, almost emoji-style behavior. He added, if I see a character raising his fucking eyebrow or crossing his arms, having a sassy pose, Oh, I hate that shit. Why does everyone act as if they're in a sitcom? I think it is emotional pornography. All the families are happy and sassy and quick. Everyone has a one-liner. Well, my dad was boring. I was boring. Everybody in my family was boring. We had no one-liners. We're all fucked up. That's what I want to see animated. I would love to see real life in animation. I actually think it's urgent. To see real life in animation. What am I supposed to do after reading that? I completely agree with what Guillermo del Toro has said. One more critique I have of this movie is that it was way too long. It should not have been an hour 45. Like, an hour 30 max, but really hour 15 would be what I think it should be. This one is going in the D tier, and I know that sounds generous, but remember I was, when I watched it, so all I can do is base my thoughts off of what my consciousness was feeling at the time, and like I said, I'm not rewatching this, so that's what we got, D tier. And this one's a smash. I love a water-based gentleman. Totally a smash. Avatar: The Way of Water 2023. Oh my god, I did not want to watch this movie. I really want to go to Animal Kingdom in Walt Disney World and see Pandora, the World of Avatar, and I really thought that I could push off watching this movie until I went and did that, but unfortunately, now is the time when I have to watch this 3-hour and 12-minute long movie. I rewatched the first one like a year ago, I think, and so I felt like I went in with enough context for this movie. But honestly, all I really remember is that Sigourney Weaver was there, and that the ponytail sex that was also with the animals. Remember that. Avatar: The Way of Water is a story about heterosexual aliens being aliens in the sense of their citizenship status in this other region of Pandora. I honestly think the Avatar franchise is pretty cheesy, and I don't really seek it out, but I do love pop culture, so I was probably gonna watch this at some point anyway. The most important part of this movie, of course, was not the heterosexual space aliens, it was not the message about environmentalism, and it was not the impressive world building. That's right. It was Jemaine's accurate American accent. Finally, in 2023, he gets the American accent. This is the best that I heard it out of all of the movies. This was like one of the last 3 or 5 movies that I watched, and I didn't know he was gonna be American when I turned it on, but I was so excited. It really feels like it wraps up that storyline because I've been complaining about it the whole video. I am so proud of him. Good work, Jemaine. It only took until you were like 49 or whatever. How old is he? I don't know. Jemaine plays Dr. Garvin, American marine biologist.
I'm Ian Garvin, a marine biologist.
He's on the bad guy side, which is like, but you can see the gears turning in that American brain of his. You can see he's questioning the ethics of the whole kill the Na'vi thing, you know? And I can tell they're American thoughts. He wasn't in this very much, but as we all know, there are no small parts, just small actors, and Jemaine is far from a small actor. I am beginning to wonder about the possibility of, you know, the fact that maybe he stuck out to me in every movie because I was watching the movies for him specifically. But we don't really have time to get into that. This is the last review. We've run out of time to get into that, so I guess it'd be a mystery forever, I guess. It took me until like Act 3 to really get invested in this movie. Once the action sequences started happening and the Na'vi were like spearing people through the chest and those like skim wing water banshee things were like grabbing people off boats with their teeth was when I was like, okay, all right, this movie's good. This is interesting. I'm gonna put this one in the D tier with the key reason being that no movie over 2 hours belongs anywhere above that. It was gonna be in the E tier, but the action sequences came up and I was like, all right, I can bump it up a tier. Oh, and the creatures. I like the creatures too. That helped bump it up for sure. There is a part of me that wishes I had seen this in theaters, but the other part of me is screaming out that the movie is 3 hours long. This one's gonna be a pass, but again, I am so proud of Jemaine for finally getting that American accent. Well, everybody, this project is coming to a close. I think I can say now with some amount of confidence that I am one of the premier scholars of Jemaine Clement's filmography. Not of the guy though, like obviously I don't know him. I mean, I've watched like interviews, but I'm all about the characters, baby. So it's December now. I think I started filming this in like May or June of this year. And I wanted to film the outro and edit the outro as like the very last thing I did because the project kept growing and changing and I kept learning new things as I went along. So I was like, I can't outro before I'm like totally done with everything else. So here we are. The reason that it took so long was not because the editing process or the filming process took a really long time, or even the preparation. It's because I worked on it really, really hard for a couple months, and then I got super burnt out, and then I just didn't even touch it for a little while. So now it's December, and I'm filming this. So things changed as I continued on, as I grew as a person. Like, for instance, I don't know why Dr. Ian Garvin wasn't a smash. I have no idea what was going through my head when I wrote that. He's definitely a smash. I also don't think some of these movies are as good as I thought they were when I was in like the throes of the hyperfixation. Honestly, I think Jemaine probably could have like thrown a coffee cup into a trash can and I would have been like, oh, the emotional depth. So if you experience hyperfixations, you know the like serotonin machine gun that happens in your head when you're going through it and you're like consuming the media or whatever it may be, you know, of the thing you're fixated on. I do still think he's an excellent actor. That hasn't changed. It's just that some of the movies I'm like, were they that good? Was Muppets Most Wanted that good? I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was. I said that I was going to go over the top movie. This is where we're going to do that. I am a big rewatcher of things, so I'm going to go ahead and name all the ones that I did rewatch as like an honorable mention. So those are the following: People, Places, Things, Eagle vs. Shark, Tongan Ninja, Nude Tuesday, What We Do in the Shadows, Flight of the Conchords Live in London. So the actual top movie is Nude Tuesday. That was my favorite of all of the ones I watched and of all the ones I rewatched. I don't have anything extra to say about it that I didn't already cover in that section. I really loved that one. That's my highest recommendation, I think. The worst movie, my personal least favorite, was Gentlemen Broncos. And for a top smash, come on, you know it's the top smash. I know it's the top smash. There's no competition for none other than Tamatoa. I would ballpark that I've spent well over 100 hours with this project, including watching the videos, including research, including writing, filming, and editing. I would say I'm absolutely in the hundreds. I've not been keeping track, and if I did, I think it would give me a heart attack to look at that number. I'm going to put on screen now the amount of time that it takes to watch every single one of Jemaine's movies just once. I have spent well over this amount of time, actually, with this project, so, but that's, hey, you know, if you want to have a Jemaine marathon, here's how long it'll take. I didn't really expect to gain anything from this project. It was really just a way to get my wiggles out while I was trapped inside with my dog, who is perfectly healthy now, by the way. He's totally good. We've been able to leave the house plenty more since I started this project. But what I did gain is like 3 new favorite movies, an undying love for Jackie Van Beek, and a DVD copy of a Dutch nudist film, so like, net gain. This started as me just like wanting to watch a few movies that Jemaine was in, and then it turned into this whole big project because, like I said, I couldn't leave the house at the time, and it ended up being a really good way to get my wiggles out. You know, in the end, it was less about watching Jemaine movies and more about me being able to complete this huge project on a scale that I've never done before, so go me. I did learn quite a bit in this process, and I would like to read you some of those things now. Not every frame of the thing you're making has to be perfect. In the case of this video, completion is more important to me than perfection. There are parts that I would go back and change, but I'm not going to, because I don't want to, because it's almost completed and that's more important. Perfectionism is a beast, it is a monster, it sucks the life out of you, and you gotta work real hard to not let it take over your whole life, so that's what this is. Another thing is that if you have a crush on a celebrity and you try to watch every single thing they've ever been in, eventually you're gonna run out of stuff to watch. And I did. And I want him to be in more stuff so I can watch that. Another thing I learned just in life, just in how my life was going, my dog is totally free of heartworm, he's totally good, but he does have epilepsy. And he's on medication for it, he's totally good, but that was an expensive revelation. I am capable of a project at this scale where no one's paying me and there's no social pressure. I didn't think I could do it. Haters will say I can't finish this video. Watch out. It's getting done. Jemaine Clement really is an amazing actor, and I'm really glad I watched all the stuff he was in because I'm impressed with his ability. I think he's really fun. Jemaine has one move that he does in fight scenes, and it's like a bull run where he like leans over and he like runs toward the other person. Dr. Ian Garvin is a smash, and I was a fool for thinking otherwise. I don't know what was wrong with me. All right, well, yeah, that about does it for me. So thanks for watching. If you got all the way through this video, and watch Nude Tuesday. Catch you on the other side.